Welcome to episode 5 of the first Rodeo experience. Today we have the pleasure to be joined by the 2-year-old Edgeman, one of my favorite Twitter follows for all things when it comes to the baby races. We go into his book, how he got started within horse racing, as well as some of his strategies around picking winners in the baby races. We hope you enjoyed this conversation with the 2-year-old Edgeman. All right, it's my pleasure to welcome on Shane, aka the 2-year-old Edgeman, to the first Rodeo Racing podcast here. Thanks for joining us, Shane.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This will be fun.
It's kind of funny how we connected. You picked the 2-year-old that we own, Power of Will at Kentucky Downs. He ran 6. I probably should give you some warning that we think we needed a race, but I use that as an excuse to connect. I've been following you since the Saratoga meet here, and you put a lot of good stuff out on Twitter.
Hey, thanks.
So it's kind of funny how we got connected that way.
Yeah,
but I guess to start, I know we'll get into all of it, but you mentioned you lived in Louisville for a number of years. You grew up there. Is that kind of how you got started? Playing horse racing.
It was, Matt. Yeah, my family moved there when I was about 9, and kind of funny story. My parents, to get kind of ingrained in the culture of Louisville, they decided to take my sister and I out to the track, and I just kicked and screamed. I said, "This is ridiculous. Why are we doing this? I hate it. This is just not what I want to be doing. I want to be hanging with my new friends, right?" But as soon as I got there, pretty much instantly fell in love with it. It was, something I spent a little too much time with in my childhood. Probably I maybe spent a few days out there when I should have been in school. But hey, what the heck? I probably learned more out there than I would have in school anyway. So what the heck? But that's where I started out at Churchill Downs. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. I think there's a lot of good life lessons that one learns through playing the horses. I feel like, I mean, you kind of understand statistics and kind of understand probability and how to take risks, how to mitigate risk.
Yeah, risk management.
Yeah. And then other times, it's just you just send it. I guess what is there anything that kind of shaped your initial opinions on playing the horse? Was there a particular person, or did you just read through the form? I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, of course. Back then, I'm an old fart, so back then it was just all the daily racing form, and kind of what I learned early on. I'm a kid. I'm 12, 13 years old. I cut grass or whatever. I made a few bucks, but I certainly didn't have much money. So you'd go out there, and what I learned early, number one, was if you want to be whatever successful at the track, you can't bet every race. You can't just bet. I used to bet $2 in every race, but back then it was nine races a day, so it was $18 a day, and I didn't have $18 every day. So I realized you got to kind of pick your spots and be disciplined and not just bet every race. So that's how I kind of found the 2-year-olds and trying to find a niche and kind of winnow this thing down a little bit. But my dad was kind of my mentor out there, as a lot of people in this game. Their dad took them out there, and we had a lot of fun, and we still laugh about it. He's 84 now, but we still laugh about times he snuck me out of school to get me out there, and so it was probably my dad back then. I read Ray Talbot stuff, and you may not even have heard of him. You guys are way younger than I have, but have you ever heard of Ray Talbot, just out of curiosity?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, no, that's funny. Yeah, he was the big name. He was kind of before Andy Beyer and kind of a speed guy. And anyway, yeah, that was my background.
I guess is there any particular fond memory you have of a particular day your dad got you, or a particular horse that you needed to bet?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, two really, if I could share. Yeah, one horse. I do know, I remember his name, but his name was Snake River, and I don't know, he must have been 50 to 1 or something. And again, I couldn't bet more than $2, but I put $2 across the board, which was a huge bet for me back then. and he was 40, 50 to 1 or whatever, and he won. And, I won a couple $100 or whatever. So Snake River was my memory. It was a claiming race. And I just remember he was dropping down, and I loved it that he was going from a, 20,000 claimer to a 10 or whatever it was. And, he hadn't run well, but anyway, that's my betting memory. My most fond memory though is I think I was in third grade, so I'm what's a third grader? Probably 8 or 9 years old. I'm a young kid, and I'm sitting in class, elementary school, and over the loudspeaker, and of course you guys don't remember that, but over the loudspeaker, the office calls down to my teacher and says, bring Shane Swenson down to the office. And I'm like, well, what the heck have I done? I haven't done anything wrong. So we go down to the office, and my dad's standing there. He goes, you ready? And I said, ready? Ready for what? And he goes, well, we're going to the dentist. He goes, you got a dentist appointment. I said, I don't have a dentist appointment. I don't remember any damn dentist appointment. And he says, yeah, you got a dentist appointment. He kind of winks at me like this. I'm like, okay. So we walk out. We're walking out of the building, and he's like, we're going to the track. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. But we giggle about that all the time, too. Yeah. True story.
I guess was Kentucky similar to how it is now with the racing calendar, where it kind of hops around? Like, Churchill's got the spring meet, the September meet, and then transitions to Turfway, and Ellis and Keeneland has their meet, and obviously Kentucky Downs as well. Was it the same back then as well?
Very similar. Now, of course, Kentucky Downs was FanDuel Downs. I can't remember when that started, but or FanDuel something or other, or not FanDuel, Dueling Grounds. Dueling Grounds is what it used to be called. Yeah, Dueling Grounds. But the big difference that I remember was that Churchill did not have a September meet. Really? I don't know who ran in September, if it was Ellis or who it was in September, but that was a big difference. For the most part, it's pretty similar. Keeneland was spring and fall. Keeneland was always April and October. Churchill was always May, June, into the 4th of July, and then the month of November, basically. So for the most part, it was the same. Now, back then, too, and I'm sure you guys have never heard of it, but there was a track called Miles Park. It's kind of on the west side of Louisville. It was called Commonwealth Park for a while, and Miles Park.
Louisville Downs at one point, right?
Well, Louisville Downs was trotters. They were pacers.
Okay.
And I know, Brian, I think Matt said that you were into pacers a little bit or something about pacers.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Growing up, we had a couple.
You owned a couple, or you were part of a couple?
Yeah, my dad owned a couple with a few of his buddies. So we had some of the same things where we would have run at like 2 p.m. or something at the Meadowlands in Jersey, and he'd come up with some random excuse to get us out of school.
Yeah, I love it. Nothing better. But yeah, Louisville Downs was the trotters, of course, the pacers. But we had fun out there too. And of course, it's a training track now. But yeah, pretty similar though. Pretty similar schedule, roughly.
Yeah. The September meet, I feel like, is big, especially with kind of your niche, kind of you like to play with 2-year-olds. I feel like there's a lot of, some owners kind of push for, let's get a start here at Saratoga, and then some are, a lot of Kentucky owners like let's wait until the September meet. And I feel like there's been a number of great horses that have kind of been unveiled at Churchill. I guess Is that a particular meet that you target? Obviously, Saratoga's big with the babies too.
Yeah, I like the summer months. I mean, if you break it down into thirds, and I kind of do that. I think of the spring, and the spring for me is April, May, and June. Part of June maybe, and then the summer months, and then winter or late fall. The spring is just so dominated by Wesley Ward. I mean, it's almost silly. So that kind of is that, and then the fall, for some reason, I think, sometimes they don't run the better horses until later. Especially, that seems to be the trend now. But anyway, the summer months, and yes, the September meet at Churchill is one of my favorite ones. Of course, it's short, but you're exactly right. And I love Saratoga. I just don't do real well up there for some reason. I just have never, I don't know, with Pletcher and of course Cox now and so forth up there. I don't typically have a great Saratoga. I had a few decent winners up there this year, but typically don't do that well. So hoping to do well here at Churchill this September.
Yeah, I guess. So obviously, like your niche is a 2-year-old. Is there a certain track that you like to target?
What I do is, I used to try to file multiple tracks at the same time, but really, again, to do this well, my whole theory is to really be specific, and I'm probably overly specific, if you will. A lot of people have accused me of that. They're probably not wrong, but it's how I do it. Everybody does it different, right? Everybody's got a gig, but I do the Keeneland meet in the spring. Again, that's a tough one with Ward, but I enjoy it. Of course, that's the pretty much the only place that's really running consistently in April. And then I moved to Churchill until that closes, and then that takes you pretty much to Saratoga, and then Churchill, and then of course Keeneland will open back, and then Churchill. So I piddled with Kentucky Downs, as you know, as you mentioned at the top here. Never done very well there either. I always
That
struggle
place
there.
is hard.
It is hard. So mainly Kentucky and then Saratoga, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's been so weird with Belmont and Aqueduct, with Belmont at the Big A and so forth. And the way and we'll talk about it later, but the way I kind of break things down, it's difficult because you're running one meet at a different track. So how do you kind of translate all that? So I've kind of slowed down on New York, other than Saratoga, because of that the building and the shutdown of Belmont here for a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the new Belmont Park. I think that'd be very cool. There's a lot going on right now with construction of tracks. I mean, Keeneland's going through big renovation.
Yep.
Churchill does a multi-million-dollar renovation every year for the Derby.
It's crazy. It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, we were out there the spring. When were we? The spring, I guess. And I didn't recognize the place. I mean, I know it's different than when I grew up, but I mean that paddock, that's the damnedest thing I've ever seen.
It's beautiful. The crazy thing to me is the first turn there, like that. Like I remember I went to my first Derby, and it was the maximum security DQ. I was in college at the time. I convinced my buddy to go with me, and we hopped in a car. He was dumb and freaking locked his keys in the fresher's office. So we didn't get there until like 6 a.m. But we were staying with like a friend of a friend that was in a fraternity at Louisville. So we were, like they were already up and drinking at 6 a.m. Like, all right, give us an hour to rest our eyes. But I remember when I went that year, like the first turn, like that all like didn't exist. And then like, I came back 2 years later, and there's like a beautiful structure. It's really like only open that one week too. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff is only open that one week. Not a big majority, but a somewhat, decent that what's it called? In the middle there. It's all glass. What's that?
Isn't the infield only open during?
Oh, the infield's only open, yeah. But on the clubhouse side, there's this big glass thing that they built kind of above the paddock between the track and there. That's only open at the paddock club or something.
Like top of the stretch, to like almost the finish line is closed too. It's weird. Like there could be like 20,000 people at Churchill, and it feels empty in a sense. It's so kind of wild, but it still has a good buzz to it.
It's so spread out. Yeah, it's really, I wish you guys could have seen it, 50 years ago when I would go out there. It was 100 completely different. But I kind of, growing up with those days, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about all the stuff they're doing. But you're right, Belmont. I can't wait to see the new Belmont, and I'll be glad when that kind of gets settled down. I don't know what they'll do with Aqueduct. I mean, that, from what I've heard, I've never been, but that place I've heard is a dump. So they'll have, Saratoga, they'll have a beautiful Belmont, and then they'll have a dump in Aqueduct. So
I think the idea is to shift all the racing that was at Aqueduct to Belmont. Because
I think you're right.
Putting in a synthetic track and the all-weather track there, and I think that's kind of the plan.
I think you're right.
I think that land's fairly valuable as well. It's in what, like Queens. I got to go before it closes because I've never been.
Yeah.
But I've heard the same thing. I heard it's not the nicest track, a lot of shitty characters around there, but that's kind of horse racing.
yeah, right, exactly. That's okay with me. I don't, that's fine.
It can't be any worse than Ellis was.
Ellis is crazy. I remember first time I went to Ellis, I remember like the bathrooms didn't even work. Like it's crazy. I mean, Churchill bought it now, so hopefully they do invest the money into it.
Yeah, they will. I heard they took the pea patch out of the middle, though. Do you guys remember the pea patch? They used to grow peas out there.
Oh yeah. Do you? They still call it the pea patch. I used to. So when I worked in Louisville, I would drive by there a lot because I did a lot of work in Evansville.
Yeah.
there's that bridge right there, and I heard the story of the bridge jumpers. It's like people that would like bet the house literally on a horse to show, and if it didn't hit, they're bridge jumpers.
Oh, geez. I've never heard I've never heard that one, but that's
It could just be a myth, It's a good like little tale to tell there.
they've got a better product though. I'll tell you what. I mean, I never even used to consider playing Ellis, but they were running 2-year Maiden Specials for 71 grand this spring, or not this spring, the summer. Um, so it's not Churchill, it's not Keeneland, it's not Saratoga, but it's viable now. It used to be kind of a you know really cheap horses, but it's not anymore. Cox brings a great string down to there. A lot of good trainers do. So I played some Ellis this year, um, during Saratoga too. The summer. So it's like you said, since Churchill bought it, they pumped some money into it, and those races are like I said, viable. They're for real.
Big time.
Yeah.
I guess on that topic, how did you find 2-year-olds as your niche, and then I guess kind of go through the process of kind of figuring out your angles. I know you have your
Yep.
book
Yep.
all about the babies, and you have like the you write articles every week
Yep.
for those races in particular. So I guess kind of how did you first find that niche, and then
Yep.
how did you find your angles within it?
Yeah, good point. So again, I literally was in maybe high school, or maybe even younger, but knew I had to focus on something, and I, for some reason, always liked the breeding aspect, the breeding side. I always tried to find something different than what people could read in the forum. And back then, the racing forum didn't publish anything about auction prices. Of course, it published the sire and the dam, right? Maybe the dam sire, but it didn't talk anything about auction prices. So for some reason, and I don't know why, but I gravitated to breeding. And if you get good at breeding or better at breeding than most, I think the obvious next step then is the younger horse, right? 6-year-old doesn't really matter. It's who it's out of. It's how it's been running, right? So breeding kind of pushed me to the 2-year-olds, and I always liked the first time starters, right? Because they were the unknown. They were what everybody kind of ran from, and they still do to some extent, right? They're like, how do you pick this? There's no past performance line. So it's kind of the contrarian theory, if you will, to look at the 2-year-old. So I've been really tracking 2-year-olds on and off all my entire life. So really going back probably 50 years, close to it anyway. And we've had kids, so it's kind of waned a little bit through the years as you're raising kids. It didn't take priority for a few years, but anyway, what my belief is after following them for a long time is it all starts with the trainer, and the trainer is from a handicapping perspective, it's the trainer, and then it's the breeding. And part of that is everybody understands sires and knows who Not This Time is and Into Mischief and all the sires. Not everybody, but most people or many people do. But really, where the advantage can come in is with the dam side, right? Nobody knows, or not nobody, but few people understand the dam, their race record, because you have to look that up. That's never in the form. So their race record and their offspring that they've thrown. So that's been a big part of it. And then workouts. Workouts are a key part. That's something I'm trying to get better. It's the old Tiger Woods theory. Tiger Woods was a great golfer, but he continued to try to get better and better, and that's what I try to do too. I do pretty well with these things, but you can always improve. So that's the thing I'm really focusing on is the workouts. And nowadays, there's a lot of websites that you can access workouts and watch them. Right, you're not just looking at times and numbers. And there's a lot to that. So working on that. But yeah, those are really kind of the main things, and then the auction prices, what they sold for, and that's not to say that the most expensive yearling or 2-year-old is the best horse in the race, but certainly it needs to be taken into consideration. And I always look at kind of stack ranked within their class. In other words, if a horse is from Not This Time, just because he sold for $200,000, that's probably lower than his median. But where does he stack if he sold as a yearling against other not this time yearlings that sold, in public auctions and so forth. So, those are the big things. And of course, horses that have run, you do look at their past performance line. But, lots of times trainers will just give horses and maybe it's the case with your horse too, let the horse get out and run and kind of get a feel of it before you really push them. So some trainers obviously do that a lot more than others. So those are kind of the key ingredients, elements that I bake into the thing.
Oh yeah. So I guess it's trainer, dam wrecker. I know you. I've read a lot of your articles. I know you typically kind of tabulate. Okay, this horse has worked over 20 furlongs in the last 3-4 weeks. I guess.
Yep.
Can you kind of go into greater detail kind of how you view workouts currently?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So so I kind of bucket them in a category if their workout was in 12 seconds or 12 seconds and change per furlong, I consider that a good work. So a work of 48 and 2, 4 furlong work of 48 and 2, that's a good work. 49 would be not so good, and anything under 48 it'd be a very good workout if they're working in 47 and change or 46 even. So I try to put it in buckets from that perspective. And you're exactly right, Matt. I'll count how many times, especially if it's a first time starter, I'll count how many times they work, but not just that, how many furlongs that entails, because that can be different. I mean, you can work out 10, if you work out, 10 works, all 4 furlong works, obviously you got 40 furlongs, but if you're working some 5 furlongs in there, it's going to be, 40 plus, right? Or over 40. So, and again, not necessarily the more the better, but I do like the long, the 5 furlong works for the obvious reason. I give those a little more credibility. And the other thing I'd mention, I think when we're talking about workouts is gait workouts. Gait moves them up for me a notch, right? If you see trainers working them from the gate all the time, though, I'm a little worried that they need gate work, right? That they're not going to behave in the gate. So, it's kind of one of those things that you got to work through. But those are the real high level pieces to workouts. And I guess the last thing I'd mention is if a horse has already run either once or multiple times, I always only look at the workouts since the last race, right? I don't go back before that race. I just don't consider that because it's not the most current. And with the baby, with the 2-year-old, it's a shorter compressed time frame, obviously.
Oh yeah, it's funny to bring up gates. I remember Kenny McPeak told the story on I think it was the TDN Writers Room or one of those podcasts where he had Mystic Dan pretty much gate school almost every single morning before the Derby just to keep him sharp, keep him locked in. And then obviously he broke super sharp in the Derby, and he outbroke Dornoch and got to the lead there a little bit and was able to kind of save all the great ride from Brian Hernandez. I think it all starts with getting out of the gate, So I feel like it's cool to kind of see how that all plays out when a trainer puts a plan together and it all works out well.
Yeah, that was something.
Is there obviously there's the big name trainers in terms of you got your Cox, your Brown, your Pletcher in New York, you got Cox in Kentucky, Asmussen's got a big string, Mott. I guess are there any certain trainers that might be a little under the radar that listeners can kind of look out for in the form when it comes to the 2-year-olds?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, you're right, Ed. Those are the ones that win the majority of the races. So typically, you said you've read some of my stuff, and thank you for that. Typically, those are the ones that I'll follow just because simply they'll win. But the under the radar ones that I had a nice winner. I guess it was opening day on Thursday. Big Boat was a winner and paid $17, and he's trained by a guy. I can't think of the guy's first name even, but it's DeVito. And very small name trainer, but he had won 2 of 4 2-year-old special maiden races at Churchill at the September meet in the last 5 years. He was 2 for 4, so small numbers, right? but a lot of success. So I look for him. The other one that he's got a horse running Thursday too that I haven't fully handicapped, but I'm a little bit excited about is a guy named Ron Moquette. He doesn't have terribly good success with 2-year-olds overall, but he's won 3, and that's not a lot, but he's won 3 races at Churchill Downs in September over the last 5 years, going back to 2019, in about 14 or 15 races. So it's only about 20% hit rate, which is still good. But Moquette's one that I'm going to watch this meet too. So I really try to find trainers like that, to your point, that are, Asmussen and Cox and Brown and all those guys get so overbet, but yet they're winning a lot of the races. So you gotta look at their horses first and hope you can get enough winners, even though you're typically not going to get any decent prices.
I got a question.
Yeah.
This could just be lack of knowledge also. It's like the big guys, they all obviously don't train the horses personally. Do you ever track to see if there's any assistants that seem to perform well, or is there even a way to look up who works out?
Honestly, Brian, that's a fabulous question. Unfortunately, the answer is I don't. I don't know that there's a way. It's something I'm going to look at because it's a really good call. A guy like Asmussen and all those guys, they have such big barns and they've got multiple stables. They can't, to your point, Brian, they can't be overseeing them on a day-to-day basis because lots of times they're not even there. So no is the answer, and I don't think there's a way. But that's a really interesting question. Which assistant? Because I think, kind of to your point, where we're going with that is, I think some of these guys do have 3 or 4 assistant trainers. So, no, I look at the listed one. That's all I've got. But
one thing I actually do to see that is, okay, like where is this horse working? Like especially in Saratoga. Like if Chad Brown has a horse working out in Saratoga, obviously he's there every week and he's seeing the horse.
Yeah.
If he has a horse working at Belmont, I think the train check's still open. I kind of downgraded that a little bit. I'm like, all right, like maybe he doesn't think the most of it does in Saratoga. And then if he has a horse at Monmouth, I think, this is definitely kind of like the BC string. So that's kind of one way you could potentially track it.
It's a good idea. Sure.
So I definitely tune into that in terms of, okay, where's this horse working? Because typically where the horse is working is kind of where it's stable and kind of where it's at and who's kind of overseeing it. And there's certain times, where it's like, it's the big thing I do at Saratoga. It's like, okay, like this horse for Walsh has been training at Turfway. Okay, like why is this horse at Turfway? Like what do they think of it? Because like obviously with those bigger strings, it's like you have their A and their B team, and obviously it could burn you as well. Sometimes the trainers don't even know before they race kind of who should be the man in the barn.
Right. No, you're exactly right. But you bring up Turfway, and I think when I see a horse trained at Turfway, many times or oftentimes they'll run on the grass because that's a synthetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll see a lot of horses training at Turfway that are prepping for grass races. But you make a good point as far as where they're working, and one point on that is I move them up just a smidge, and I don't move them to the top of the list just because of it, but I do like a horse that's worked over today's track. So if you're handicapping Churchill here, I like the horses that have trained at Churchill on the main strip. Now Saratoga's a little tricky. Churchill to some extent, but not nearly as much. But obviously Saratoga with that training track, many horses I think train over across the street at what do they call it, Oklahoma, at the Oklahoma training track, right? Churchill some train out at the old Louisville Downs at the training track here in Louisville, but the majority of the time, if it's at Churchill, of course it'll denote it in the form. But I like a horse that has felt that track and that has had a decent work or a good work or a very good work on that track.
Yeah. I guess another thing, kind of like the breeding side of things. One thing I kind of key in on, and I kind of learned this like just through Twitter. There's a guy like Bruno with the Works, and he's awesome. He puts out some good information. And I remember reading some of his tweets and how he interpolates the Shefty race, the dosage index, and that's another thing that I kind of key in on too. Is okay, like and it's obviously an inexact science, but I kind of key in on that. I look
Yeah.
for, like he wrote a really nice article about how obviously it's like brilliant to what's it on the
Brilliant, classic, and then uh, brilliant's the speed side of it, right? And the
professional, I
others.
want to say, yeah.
I
So
used to follow that stuff, but I don't anymore.
yeah, so the middle score, Bruno was like, okay, if there's a high number in that middle classic section, high number typically means the horse is gonna need some time to develop, just based on its breeding.
Right.
That's one thing I try to track, and with 2-year-olds. Okay, if this horse got a low number in that center, all the horses now are like pushed to the left in terms of the center distribution there. That's kind of one thing I
Interesting.
key in on. Is there any other angles breeding wise? I know like with the formulator from DRF, you're able to kind of like compare dams and kind of see how their race record was as a 2-year-old, and there's stats called out for their offspring's 2-year-olds. Is there any other angles or things you look for, like whether it's certain dam sire or anything else in between, from the breeding side of things, for the babies?
Yeah. So two things. So I do my own. I create my own numbers as far as sire statistics, and I use a product called BetMix that first puts out. But I guess you could also do it on some others. But anyway, so I'll take a sire and I'll go back as far as I can. You can go back to 2012 with them. So if they have been producing that long, I'll go back as long as I can get. But I'll look at their statistics with 2-year-olds in maiden special weight races at typically at about 30,000 in purses of $30,000 or more. I don't want the real, the real cheap ones don't. I think can skew the numbers. So I usually typically use 30,000. It's a little tricky because back in 2012, a $30,000 race may have been a decent race. Now it's not a very big race. So it's you got to kind of play with it. But I'll do my own sire statistics and look how do they do with 2-year-olds. How do they do with 2-year-old first time starters in maiden special weight races, 30,000 and up? How do they do on the turf? Kind of break it down into those pieces. And to me, that's really what it's all about. Typically the precocious ones when they race typically will throw more precocious, but to me, if you've got enough, if the first year sires are a little bit tougher, obviously because you don't have you don't have any statistics or very few. So yeah, that's how I'll do it. And then talking about the dam sire, what I've done lately in the last year or two as I've started to look at the cross. You talk about nicking patterns. I don't know if you guys probably know about nicking patterns. I don't know a ton about them, but I thought about how do I bake them into what I'm doing, and I'm thinking, well, I kind of create my own nicking patterns. In other words, take not this time, and how does he do with dams that are by Into Mischief, or pick a name, right? So how does that cross work with just 2-year-olds? Again, I don't care if that horse wins $1 million as a 4 and a 5-year-old if I'm just looking at 2-year-olds. Obviously, it means they've got a better horse, but all I care is about the precocity and how they do in maiden special weight races. So I take those crosses and I look at them specifically at 2-year-old maiden special weight levels, again at purses of $30,000 or $50,000 or higher.
Yeah, I guess is there any particular like sire or like line of stallions that you key in? I know Practical Joke has been a good one. Flame Away is his second crop here. He seems to be throwing precocious ones. Is there any other stallions that you've been keyed in on?
Yeah, second year sire. I love Mitole. Mitole, whatever it is, Mitole, as a second crop sire. My favorite ones are, I love Nyquist, and I think Big Boat last week was a Nyquist, if I remember right. I Not This Time is fantastic. Produces a lot of really, really precocious runners. I think he's over 20%. Nyquist is over 20%. Into Mischief's numbers aren't that great, but obviously, I love Into Mischief just because it's such a class act. So what I'll do literally is I'll go through, Thursday there's an open Maiden Special Weight race, and I'll go through it, and I'll just look at all the sides. There's City of Light. City of Light's pretty good. Munnings I like. Munnings has got a horse Thursday, so I'll go through who are. Oh, Constitution is another one of my favorites. His numbers aren't quite as high as some of the other ones I mentioned. But I don't know. My heart kind of wins out over my head sometimes, and it shouldn't. But Constitution is another favorite of mine. So yeah, there's and it's all relative, right? If you've got 12 horses and there's 11 just sires that are stinkers, that really don't throw good 2-year-olds. If an average 2-year-old sire's in there, then he's good, right? So it's all relativity because it's race by race. But yeah, those are the ones that jump out of my head as favorites. I try, and I don't do well, but I try to not have favorites because again, they kind of skew your thinking. Just let the numbers and let the statistics speak for themselves. But we're human, so you win with a few of them. You get a nice winner, and you kind of go back to them, and that's not the way to play it. You got to take the emotion out of it, but. What the heck? This is for fun too. And I don't make a living doing this, obviously, and not many people do or can. But yeah, is that kind of where you were going?
Oh yeah, big time. I think not this time. An interesting one. I feel like his fee started kind of low. He was part of the first initial intake that Taylor made. Went into trying to have a stallion barn again, and I think it's a little scary to me because I feel like he's just scratching the surface. I feel like he's in his like 4th or 5th crop, and I feel like breeders are starting to figure out, okay, like what's the proper horse to send to him, and I feel like, okay, once they start sending the better dams to him, okay, now it's really time. It's interesting for me to kind of see how that progression works. Like Secretary wasn't a great sire, but he ended up being a good dam sire stallion.
That's right.
A lot of times it's because they just got sent the best blood to the stallion barn, and you could say very similar things for American Pharaoh and obviously Bernardini's when I key in on. It's
yeah.
I think there's obviously dosage index is all about stallions. Then the True Nick stuff that's all about stallions too.
Yeah.
I think people discount, and for good reason, because obviously each dam can only produce one foal a year, so there's less statistics around it. There's less ways to compare and put together those stats. But
you're right.
People I think discount the dam side. I feel like the mama sometimes is dominating when it comes to that.
There's no doubt about it, and the good thing about that is that's one of the last frontiers where there's really easily accessible information on. So like I said, I used to find auction information that most people didn't know about, but now everybody knows about it. So most of the stuff is kind of getting eaten up, but the dam side, and if people do their homework, you can get it. It's out there, but it's just not in your face. But you're right. I think that's kind of one of the last differentiators that really isn't, and that's what I try to do in my articles. Focus in the stuff. I try to focus in on the stuff that Joe Blow can't read in the racing form, because anybody can read the racing form. So I try to stay away from that. And try to focus more on what you can't get it. But it's so funny what you're saying about Matt about not this time, because literally just this week I heard somebody say the exact same thing. They said he started to get better dams in the last couple of years, and they're excited to see, his offspring with the better dams, because I want to say he started out his stud fee. I think it's 150 now. I think it was. I want to say it was less than 40. I can't remember, but his first year wasn't that much.
And Timothy started the same way too. He was I think he stood for 20 or something, and he was part of that Share the Upside program that that's the Spendthrift does. It's the stallion making business. Obviously, that's big money when you can make one, and there's a lot of options for that.
Huge, that's where it's at.
Cool to see how that kind of plays through.
Right.
I guess, are there any tools? I know you mentioned BetMix. What are the other tools that you go to when it comes to your handicap and mix? I know XBTV has some workouts. Is there anything else that you utilize?
Yeah. those are the main ones. Equibase has got a lot of good stuff. And the American Produce Records are another one for the dam side of it. Yeah, those are the main ones. Obviously, the past performance is kind of where you start, right? Because you got the trainer, the jockey, the sire, the dam, the morning line odds or whatever. But yeah, no, I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head. BetMix is really the one with the data that you can dig into and pull out, whatever way you want to. I'm always fiddling with that, thinking of some kind of new angle to try to play.
Yeah, one thing I've been banging my drum on is I feel like the data for horse racing. First, Rodeo, like our whole mission is getting younger people into the game, younger people like understanding kind of how it all works, and obviously reading the form is a big hurdle for people. Like people grow up playing football or playing basketball, so I feel like they're more inclined to bet it because they feel like they know a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's kind of like two problems I feel like in my brain in terms of, okay, not only is the data kind of hard to interpolate, it also costs money. I feel like some of the data handicapping wise, I feel like there's some tracks that do a decent job of, okay, we're going to offer these past performances for free.
Yeah.
But I do feel like that's a hindrance to the growth of the sport, is that a lot of this data is, hidden behind a paywall and hard to interpolate. I know like there's a tool, 2YO Edge, that's trying to use like AI for their picks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure like how I've used it from time to time. I think it's a cool product, and I think it's a very good way. I actually kind of cut my teeth at Monmouth when I was in college, like understanding the game in Timeform US. I'm a big fan of Timeform for their pace figures, and obviously they've added it to a lot of the forms now. But I feel like Equine is just really nice because it breaks out. When someone like Brian or someone's new to horse racing comes, to the Derby, the first thing I usually teach them is, okay, there's like three main pillars. You got like speed, pace, and class, and that's actually called out within the Equine Edge product, which I feel like is a really good way to introduce people to those pillars without having to understand. Like, okay, you got to understand that this is a allowance optional claiming for 50,000. That's a little bit worse than like a N1X allowance that's running at Keeneland versus like, okay, they're running at Belterra here, and obviously that's part of growing within it and kind of understanding, trying to like find your angles and understanding where you potentially profit. So that's the data side is kind of what initially drew me in, and I kind of kept my teeth in Timeform. But that's like one thing. If I had a magic wand, I'd be like, okay, let's make the data free for everyone to go to. And a question I always ask guests is like, okay, like you're Commissioner Rapoli now, like you're named commissioner, but you have a magic wand. You could change one thing about horse racing in any aspect. You don't really got to think about money, think about anything else. Is magic wand. What is like your genie wish? Like, what would you want to be changed when you wake up tomorrow morning within horse racing?
That's a great question, man. You do bring up a really good one. Not to hitchhike off yours, but more accessible, less expensive data, and I do think it's going that direction, right? It's not all free, and you got to kind of balance that by these people that put it all together. It's a lot of work, I offer all my stuff for free, but there's times I'm thinking, geez, I put an awful lot of hours into this and I'm not getting paid. So, it's only fair for a data company to get paid too, or what's their sense of putting it out? So that's a good, I kind of go back and forth on that one. But, I think horse racing has got to figure out a way, Heisen, Haiwu, everybody's got their different feelings on that, but, I think that's just, it's got to be figured out that these trainers that are getting in trouble for picograms or whatever it is of metformin getting in a horse's system. Well, nobody's going to give a horse metformin, right? It's not a performance enhancing drug. Why give it to them? What's the big deal? I mean, they're going to pick stuff up, they're around a lot of people and stuff. So I really think that's a big one. Is if I had that magic wand, I'd wave it and figure out a way to because it's a difficult thing. You got to punish trainers that are cheating, but if you start suspending guys that had 1 picogram of metformin in their horse's system, and you suspend them, you got to have a fair playing field. So I think that's where it starts. That the industry really is going backwards, and they've got to turn it around. That's it's an interesting question, though. It's a good one. I don't have a great answer for it. There's a lot of things that have to get better. There's got to be more money too in the middle the middle sector of at auctions. Obviously, the high end horses are still bringing $500,000, $1 million plus dollars, but those middle ones are the ones that they're just not bringing the money that they used to. And then breeders, why breed them if you're not going to get any money for it? So it's kind of a vicious circle.
I was trading texts with a buddy yesterday. I had this idea of obviously they list the breeder in the form. That's something that's very easily tracked.
Sure.
And I think one thing it's not technically a low hanging fruit. I feel like there's a lot of work that has to go into it, but I would love to see breeder stats expanded. Like the formulator, you can really dig into. Like, how does Pletcher do in Churchill in this September, like you mentioned earlier? I feel like there needs to be a greater emphasis on the breeding side of the statistics. Okay, like this breeder, the average number of starts from that breeder is X.
Yeah.
The average sales price is Y. And they typically like their average wing distance is Z. I think that is one thing that I would like to see, because to your point with the highs to high wheel, I think it's a necessary evil in a sense. Right now it's kind of evil. I think that's kind of the way a lot of trainers are speaking of it, because it's scary. Like I've become friendly with Ray Handel, and he kind of was one of the first guys that got pop for something, and he had to hire lawyers. He was losing sleep over it, and it's crazy kind of what all happens there. Obviously it's necessary though, because you had the whole Navarro and Service running rampant at Monmouth.
So where's that middle ground, right? Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
But I feel like I feel like a lot of the reason because of that, obviously you want a level playing field. You want people that are playing the sport to have a level playing field, or the owners to have a level playing field. I always come back to the two stakeholders that are elective and run the entire sport are your gamblers and your owners. So everything should be viewed through the lens of how do we improve this product for owners and gamblers. Yeah. And I feel like the breeding statistics things will help both parties, because then when you're comparing your statistics for the baby races, you can then which breeders typically breed more precocious speedy young offspring. And then from the owner side, that'd be really nice. You're at the yearling sale, you have your book open, and you see bred by Y, and then you could then go and look up how is this breeder done in terms of soundness. And I feel like that's a lot of the social license of horse racing. I feel like I've just had a conversation about it yesterday. Is one thing that's kind of under attack right now, because obviously no one likes to see a horse break down. I was there for New York Thunder, and I almost started freaking crying. It's terrible to see. You never like to see it, and I feel like if you start tracking that, I feel like personally, I feel like everything responds to incentives. So if you all of a sudden incentivize breeders to breed more sound horses, you're now tracking that and showing that, and that's correlated to sales price. I feel like that then in turn will be, the first cog in the machine of kind of, let's get back to a horse run every 2 weeks, and these things are more sound and less fragile. I mean, obviously there's still horses, there's still animals, so they're still fragile by nature, but that's one thing that I always kind of come back to.
I like it. I like it. I've piddled a little bit with breeder success and so forth, but on a bigger picture, forget about 2-year-olds for a minute. I agree with you, because just this week or last week, it was, I can't even remember the horse's name, but he won a maiden special out in California real spectacularly, and then they found a problem with him where he can't run again, but they're going to breed him. He's a maiden winner, and they're breeding him, and he's not even healthy enough to run 2 races. So I don't know what you do about that, but you kind of inferred it earlier in our discussion where there's so much money in breeding. I see why they put him in breed, but I would never breed a mare to a horse that couldn't run 2 races. But people will.
It's crazy to me that happens. But like the incentive is to do that though, because obviously the owner wants to rush off to the breeding check. That's where the money's at.
Yep.
And these stallion farms, like for first year stallions, typically bring your greatest multiple in terms of sales price.
Right.
So breeders like there's breeders that all they do is they just breed to the next crop of first year stallions every single year because they know that's their best chance at delivering a multiple. So it's a crazy like chicken and the egg kind of problem when it comes to that.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, something's got to be done about that. And then kind of you're talking about you can take so many ways, but the other thing that jumps into my mind is some of these justifying some of them that are breeding in 2 different hemispheres, and they're breeding. They're breeding to 150, over 200 mares, in each hemisphere. It's really thinning out the blood, right? Because there's so many offspring just coming from so relatively few horses. A lot of people want to limit how many times you can breed a horse every year, and I get that. But the flip side of that is, I don't know what the answer is. Obviously, I couldn't be commissioner, but. It's an interesting discussion, if nothing else. Should you limit it? Shouldn't you? I could make a big case either way, but we'll see. There's a lot of things like that the industry's got to figure out if they want to. I mean, it used to be the biggest spectator sport in the United States. I mean, did you guys realize that? I mean, you're young.
It's America's original sport. You see photos like through the years of like in the 70s. I feel like that's kind of like the glory days of it. You see Belmont Park on a Friday was probably like at capacity. Now it's like you need a Triple Crown winner on the line in order to get that filled.
Exactly. I mean, you got to do something about it, but. I don't know. It's a tough thing, but there's smarter people than I that are working on it. So hopefully it can be. The full crop's down so much too. It's about half of what it was not long ago. So it's.
I think it's to me it's the greatest sport in the world, and that's one thing that like kind of inspires me is like there's really nothing better than it. Like
I agree.
Nothing better than like winning a bet or like you own a horse and it feels like one of your like when you're like I don't have kids, but it feels like one of your sons is out there racing or daughters. Like there's nothing that compares to it, and I feel like like the indicators are strange because I feel like it paints a very murky picture. If you were just looking at handle and purses. Things like that are going up. Then you bring up like full crop is down. Sales, like obviously like the numbers were crazy out of the first 2 books of Keeneland, like $42 million yearlings. But how does it continue to the middle market? Like at the end of the day, one thing that bothers me and one thing that like kind of inspired me to start First Rodeo and kind of this podcast and et cetera is, the sport needs to start being a little bit more proactive. I feel like in terms of attracting new eyeballs, and I feel like there have been things that have been good sparks. Like the COVID, we were the only game in town again, and some people got
right. True.
In town again. And I feel like we didn't take full advantage of it. I say we because I feel like I'm involved in it. I love it so much.
Right.
But like another thing that I always go back to is like, why can't we figure out? I understand the reasoning behind like pari-mutuel wagering and making sure the money goes back to the horseman. I totally agree with that, and I think pari-mutuel is an amazing way to gamble because I always tell my friends you're not betting against the house, but against the public, which is obviously a great advantage as well. But there's no reason why. I talked to a guy, Matthew Reedy, on Friday, and he's at UK right now. He's 20 years old. He's probably a sophomore or junior there, and he was saying like and this is scary to me, is that, like, those guys are in Lexington, they're in the horse capital of the world, and they're sitting on their couches, and they couldn't give a damn about horse racing because they're building their sports parlays with college football, where they feel like they have a little bit more knowledge about it. And obviously, like, there's a good quote that I think that it's one of the Taylors said, where obviously, as the horse has gotten out of the daily life of Americans, it's a natural progression that they understand less about it. But we have to meet people where they're at, and then where they're at right now is like sports gambling is exploding. You see these sign up bonuses, these new states are coming online.
Yep.
We got to get in front of those people that are on those apps, because that's the future of the sport. Like I said, like those are your future gamblers, your future gamblers. Like it's crazy to me that we can't figure that out.
Well, you're so right. You're spot on. And of course we talked on Twitter, so I didn't know anything about you, but it was so good to see both of you guys and see young guys, right? You're not old farts like me that used to that play it, and it takes everybody, right? But there's not as many guys in their 20s like you guys are that are as passionate about it, and I love to see every one of them. So it's neat. But yeah, hopefully somebody can figure it out. It's too great of a sport to kind of dwindle and die and just peter out. So
100%.
Good stuff.
I mean, we always throw around like prop betting. Like if we could add more different ways to bet that way.
Yeah,
because
maybe
a lot of kids in college just chase that plus sign. They'll throw just random teams to try to go $5 to win 100. I feel like sometimes it's just like that visual aspect in horse racing where, I mean, you could get there with exact as it gets really expensive really fast, but that or
it's a great thought. You're right. I mean, prop bets to a guy like me are like the silliest thing in the world, but you got to realize that they're not to the younger generation. So it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that if that's what young people like, you got to figure a way to work it in. If you want your sport to capitalize on that, you got to figure it out. So prop bets are a great idea. It's something I've never thought about because I don't care about them. I think they're stupid, frankly, but if young people like them, they like them.
Gotta meet people where they're at. Brian and I actually during like the Derby prep season this year, we actually were running like a free contest on our website where we would just like upload, say, a Google form. So it's like kind of yes or no questions that are prop wise, but it's like there's no reason why, like it's summer, people are betting baseball. It's the beginning of college football season. There's no reason why there shouldn't be, yesterday at Churchill, I don't know how many mounts Jose Ortiz has, but there's no reason why we can't have, like over under 2.5 wins for Jose Ortiz today at Churchill. Like that's
brilliant. I absolutely love it. I wouldn't play it, but I would absolutely. I may play it. I might. It's brilliant.
You choose too. Like who's going to win the Saratoga meet, the training titles, title. Like we got to be more innovative with the way. Like obviously, we're a gambling product. We have to be more innovative with our gambling product in order to kind of get this thing into the future.
I'm voting for you and you guys as co-chairman of Rapoli's out. You guys no, seriously, it does help when younger guys like you think about it because you come at it from a completely different direction, and that's all good stuff. That's great.
That's the beauty of it. Is I feel like it's it's a sport where everyone has an opinion when they go to the windows to bet when they decide who to breed their mare to. And I love it because it's a game where you find out. Like you at the end of the day, there's only one horse getting their picture taken. So you do find out. And I feel like if we need to take that competitive nature into other aspects of the sport.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. Real quick on that too is takeout. Takeout. I was talking to a guy last night. Matter of fact, we were talking about Vegas table games and roulette and all that fun stuff. And takeout is what 3 to 5% or maybe less. I don't even know, but it's not much. And then you get to horse racing, and it's minimum 16 to 18 and up to 25 plus for exotics, right? So I mean, it's not even in the same hemisphere as far as takeout. And that's not to say horse racing should be 3% takeout, but can it be 12? You know, can it be less? I don't, I'm not that smart. I don't know, but it just feels like until you get that number down a little bit, or if you can get that number down a little bit, it's got to help.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole like penny breakage thing in Kentucky is
Penny
huge.
breakage. Yeah.
That's been huge. Like takeout, obviously, there's like the real takeout. You know, like Keelan did a thing where they tried to take out the doubles, and it was a good marketing tactic because then there's more than the double pools. But it's a huge problem. You know, at the end of the day, it's like people like us that gamble on the sport. You know, day to day. The more dollars you can put back to us are probably going back to the windows and taking it back here again. So it's I mean, like, and obviously the whole like CAW thing is like computer assisted wagering. That's another big issue as well. So
Huge.
There's real takeout, and there's also like takeout when you consider like that as well. So it's like I feel like, you know, like I always come back to like let's keep the main thing here. Like let's make this a product that's most attractive to the two elective stakeholders, which are the gamblers and the owners.
And that's certainly the gambler. That's one of the big things for gamblers. Yeah. You know, and you talk about the CDWs, the computer assisted CAW or whatever you want to call it. You know, get back to the 2-year-olds. That's another. I don't believe, and I don't know this for a fact, but I don't believe the computer guys are playing the 2-year-olds as much just because you don't have any running.
I don't have anything to go on.
I don't think so. I don't think so either. So that's, you know, when I'm trying to sell 2-year-old racing to people too, and I guess I, you know, always am a little bit, right? But that to me is a bonus of playing the 2-year-olds is you're not fighting those guys at least as heavily. I just have to believe you're not. But yeah, it's good stuff. This is really fun. It's great to get to know you guys. I would tell anybody watching that. I'm very sincerely impressed that, you know, you guys haven't been in it very long. You know, 4 or 5 years it sounds like for you, Matt, maybe even less for you, Brian. It's you guys know your stuff, and you know, I'd wholeheartedly you know, tell people to consider what your partnership.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
I guess on that point, Brian, you got any questions? I feel like Brian's been into it by being friends with me, I feel like. And then I've really roped him in here, kind of getting into the partnership game. And he's got the itch now too. He's texted me, you know, like, this intermission guy is really good. I was like, oh yeah, Brian, he's a leading sire for the last like X number of years. So I guess Brian's a good perspective too, because I feel like Brian is, you know, a younger guy getting more into it. Brian, any questions you got for the 2-year-old Edgeman here?
Yeah, going back to, you know, you said you grew up around the track and whatnot.
Yeah.
And one piece of advice that my dad told me, and I don't even know if he meant it as a joke or what, he was behind it, but he was like, I mean, me and my brother had pretty free reign. They weren't helicopter by any means, my parents. And he's like, yeah, if you guys ever go to the track, stay away from the guys in suits. Go to the guys ripping a cig with holes in their sweatpants and see what those guys are betting and talk to them.
Love it. 100% agree. Love it. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. You know, the guy may be betting $100 or $500 or whatever, and he's got a fancy suit on. You know, unless it's Bob Baffert or Todd Pletcher or somebody like that, I'm with you. That's great advice. That's great advice. I think it's the guys that are, you know, that are getting dirty, that you know, that are on the backside, that you know, that really understand horses. It's a good point.
Yeah, that's the only real question I had. I think everything.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, if I was to give advice, you know, you know, it gets back to what I've already said, is that I think some people try to play too many races. You know, that's my big one, and again, that's because it kind of shaped what I do. That's my big one, and you can make enough money by betting fewer. You make more money by betting more quality bets as opposed to a quantity of bets. Make good bets, and of course that's easy and that's very trite to say, right? But you don't need to be playing every race. I think there's money to be made, like on Derby Day and on Breeders' Cup Day too, when the pools are so big and you've got a lot of, I'll call it dumb money, and that's not very nice to say, but right, you got money by people that don't know what the hell they're doing. So since I think you were talking about it, Matt, you're betting against, not betting against the house, you're betting against the guy that's also betting. So those are good days to play. I know guys that only play pick sixes and pick fives on those days, and to me that makes good sense.
Oh man, that brings up a good and a bad memory. The Rich Strike year, I was alive to Epicenter and Taba in the pick five. And I had a huge, I'm talking $50 exacta for me. It's a crazy bet.
Yeah.
I had a pure exacta Epicenter over Zandon. So I was hot, and I was like 4 for 4 in the day. I got there, and I'm drunk, betting, and I was alive to a pick five to Epicenter and Taba that year, and a Rich Strike was up the inside. At the end of the day, I went home, and I was happy as could be, because you know what? That was a great story for the sport. Because the little man, that's what keeps the dream alive. Like you can go to Churchill and claim a 40K claimer like Rich Strike and win the Derby. 10 months later, like that is the freaking dream. That's the American dream. That's the horse racing dream. There's nothing better than that, in my opinion.
Well, you're a better man than I, because I had Epicenter in all the early Derby pools. I bet on Epicenter back, I think, as early as November the year before. My son and I liked Epicenter. I like Asmussen, and Winchell's got it. Winchell, the owner, I'm a fan of theirs. But anyway, they, so I was sick to my stomach. But you were bigger than I that day. That's good. I
wasn't happy in the moment. I actually, it's crazy the amount of work you put in for the Derby.
Yeah.
And I didn't even look. It was an AE, so I didn't even consider them. So I learned I wasn't that day is freaking look at the AEs.
I'm like, who is this horse? And I studied.
I literally grabbed the program. I was like, who the hell is that?
Who is it? Right? And of course, he's never won another race. And no, I think
I'm trying to bring him back. It's kind of a sad story there.
Yes, it is. I was hoping Mott could get him back, but I read the other day that he might not be able to. But if anybody can, he's probably all-time favorite trainer. I think Mott's. I'm a big Mott fan. Actually, my son went to he was at UK. He was a fraternity brother of Riley Mott.
Oh, no way.
Bill's son. Yeah, so he's a good friend of Riley's, and I've always been a fan of Bill's. So that's a neat family, good family.
Oh yeah, big time.
Talented. Yeah.
All right, I think Brian, you got any more questions, or we're gonna wrap
Anything
it up
else?
with some rapid fire questions here?
No, I'm all set.
All right, so we're gonna go through some rapid fire questions here. They're mainly like one word or one sentence answers. So we'll try to go run through them.
Yep.
All right, favorite track?
Churchill.
Bang. Yep. Favorite horse? Could be alive, could be
Ruffian.
Great pick. You're a raider. You get to decide which dam you're buying. Which dam sire it's by. You get to choose, obviously, who you breed to. Who you're breeding in that scenario. Is there a certain nick?
I can't think of a certain nick. It definitely would be Nyquist, Constitution. Those would probably be my two picks on the sire side, and I'd have to look at my list because it gets so confusing because they bred to so many different dams and so forth. Dam sires. I'd have to look, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah. All right, this is kind of a funny one.
Yeah.
So horses are getting announced. They're on the track, the post parade. Every horse gets a walkout song. Similar to MLB baseball players into the box. Is there a certain walkout song you'd have your horses go out to?
We are the champions.
That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, now a little bit more serious. When you hear the word successful, is there a certain person that pops in your brain? Could be a horse racing otherwise.
Yeah, I'd go back to Bill Mott. Bill Mott.
Is there a quote that you live by or think of often?
Don't bet every race.
It's a good one. Any advice to your younger self? Don't bet every race.
Don't bet any races. Stay out of this damn game. Obviously, I'm kidding there. Yeah, not that I shouldn't have done a lot of things different, but I can't think of anything specific. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. Any last requests or listeners or last parting words here?
No, I just, I know you mentioned my book before. I would just, if I could, real quick, bring that up again. I've got it here, and it can be found on Amazon. Handicapping 2-year-old thoroughbreds. Something I put together. It came out in January, and there's not a lot of information on 2-year-olds. But if I've sold you at all about 2-year-old handicapping, and you're interested in it, I'd highly suggest you pick up the book. There was a book written about 20 years ago. Gosh, I'm forgetting the guy's name. That's terrible. But wrote a book on maidens and 2-year-olds. But other than that, there's really not much out there. And the other thing I would say is, what I try to do is I try to teach people how to bet them and the important pieces of them. I always make a pick in my articles on PassTheWire.com. I'd like to mention PassTheWire.com. John Stetton, who runs that, it's always been very, very gracious to me and runs my articles. I don't fancy myself as a pickster. I get excited when I pick a winner, but I always make a pick when I'm covering a race, just because it's sporting, right? I think it's kind of non-sporting not to pick something. But what I like to try to stress to everybody is what I think of myself more as a teacher as opposed to a pickster. But yeah, pick up the book if you're so inclined. Again, you can get it on Amazon. I think it's $12.95 or something like that. It's a paperback book. It's about 120 pages. First thing I've ever put out, but I'm pretty proud of it, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback on it. A lot of people have learned a few things. And I always say it's not rocket science, but it's what I think is important in a 2-year race. It's what we talked about earlier. So yeah, thanks for letting me plug that for a second.
Of course, yeah. We appreciate you joining us, Shane. This has been a great conversation here.
Absolute blast.
Appreciate you hopping on here. I'm looking forward to following your articles and texting back and forth about some races here.
I look forward to it. You guys have been great, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me on. Brian, go back to bed, get some sleep, man. It's early. I'm amazed that you were able to get up this early. I wouldn't have been up at 6 o'clock. Trust me.
Oh, my dog
so kudos
doesn't have a
to you.
snooze button.
Exactly. All right. Good to know you guys. This was an absolute blast. Thanks for having me.
God bless. Thank you.
See you, buddy. See you guys.